Greetings! Today I would like to showcase my Photobash sketch workflow I often use for professional and personal work. This will be a bigger series where I will guide you through my process of creating high-quality environment concept art from sketch to 3D to the final image. So, let's get started. It is a good idea to have a plan on what you're going for. For that reason, I decided to lay down a very rough grayscale sketch indicating the main building blocks of the composition. I wanted to lead the eye into the distance with a simplified C-curve, which later on would transform itself into a river and a highway sitting on top of it. Without this pre-planning, I would have a much harder time figuring out my visual idea. Our job as concept artists is to provide visual guidance for clients or colleagues, but we often make it harder for ourselves because we have no clear vision. This is especially true for personal projects where the scope is blurred. So once the composition is established, we start to place photos on top. I made sure to collect photos beforehand and checked if they have proper rights to them. For this personal project, I chose to collect material from Flickr and other stock websites. A general tip when working with photo material is to look out for specific lighting conditions suitable to your vision. It would be a mistake stitching together photos where the lighting is opposing itself. You might have seen art pieces where sunset lit objects are placed right next to an afternoon sun, or even studio lit conditions. I did those mistakes back in the day myself, making my artwork much less impactful. To avoid that, I would suggest searching for photo shoots taken at the same time, at the same place, and by the same person. This makes everything much more coherent and believable. It is possible to use photos of different lighting conditions when nothing else is available, but in such cases, you would have a harder time repainting the light from scratch. Another point to keep in mind is the depicted scale and perspective, or in other words, the focal length. I would try sticking as close as possible to a certain optical length. In cases where this isn't possible, you would need to fix the perspective. Such corrections will be showcased later on. You can see me using various techniques for cutting out parts of the landscape and blending it together. It always depends on the conditions of the photo, but in general, the quick selection and the lasso tool with additional edge modification is more than enough for this sketch. It is especially true for the nature landscape scene here. If something has a good contrast, like a dark object in front of a bright sky, you could also try modifying the RGB channels to get an even cleaner selection. We also shouldn't forget the layer mask feature, which can help you blend in the photo even more after cutting it out. At this point of time, everything seems a bit dirty, but as long as we keep on adding new elements and balance them out between each other, we're perfectly fine. We shouldn't focus too long on one element to lose momentum. Getting back to the main elements of the composition, I decided to work a bit on the highway, which sits on top of the river. Compositionally, it is an obvious leading line, guiding our eye to the distant city. I had to skew the road heavily here to make it fit. Any issues arriving from that will be fixed later on in the overpainting part. An important takeout for the world-building aspect is to add infrastructure like fields, farmsteads and lumber camps all around the landscape to make the environment much more believable. Every now and then I clean up or fix problems I see in the elements of the artwork. The content-aware fill is really useful in that regard. For some time now, I'm focusing my attention on adding more and more elements. It's a good time to make some last corrections of the composition, looking back at the sketch. The further down the line, the more difficult it will be to make such changes, because of layered detail on top of each other. The blocking phase is officially over, so that's why I'm detailing the most noticeable elements of the artwork, like the river and the middle ground hill. I'm cutting out even more of the already used photo and making an addition to the river shore. Feel free to slow down the video at any point to see exactly what I'm doing. So here's the part where I fixed the heavily skewed photo of the highway, with all the traffic on top. I'll make sure to extend the fences and correct the most noticeable trucks. This is one of the regions that I will focus myself on in the 3D process in the next video. To check if all the colors are harmonizing between each other, I placed a hue saturation adjustment layer on top of everything and set its value to 50% saturation to see the color more clear. I'm used to match all my colors to each other as soon as I place the photo, but the human eye gets used to colors sooner or later and we start to make mistakes. That's why this layer is perfect to test everything when you don't have the possibility to reach out for feedback to others. Now I start to overpaint certain parts of the artwork to get the desired look I'm going for. If this wouldn't be a sketch to guide me in further steps, I would stick to using photos without overpainting as much. Last but not least, I paint over the landscape with a lighten layer, emphasizing the atmosphere even more and getting rid of unnecessary details. We are almost at the end of the process for this sketch. Regardless of whether it is just a sketch or a finished artwork, I always try to get a similar finish to all of my artworks, by adding post-processing effects like vignettes, additional blurring, glows or noise. Since this personal project is cinematic in its core, it was out of the question to leave the artwork as it is. It needed an additional color punch in form of some color correction at the end. A good way to do that is to use the camera raw filter to fine-tune all the values, contrasts and colors. If that isn't enough, you can always get in some color filters, LUTs and curve adjustments on top. Even here, don't forget to have a good reference. I went for a slightly green-yellow tint, which should forecast a tense detective story. And that's it for the sketch. Thanks for watching. For more content like this, like and subscribe. See you in the next episode.